I'd like to welcome you all here. We'll start with introductions. I am Scott Sawyer, Budget Committee Chair, RSU 16 board member, and all-around nice guy.
Colleen Quinn, Minor Budget Committee.
Erlen Torrey, Poland Budget Committee.
Aaron Willett, RSU 16 School Board.
Wendy Ritchie, RSU 16 Finance Coordinator.
Mariella Jones, RSU 16 Board.
Mary Martin, RSU 16 Board Member.
Kim Brandt, Assistant Superintendent.
Tina Missouri, Superintendent.
And from what I understand, we have actual financial numbers from the state. So we're going to I would go by the agenda, but apparently we don't have them. Oh, Aaron, missed you. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, yeah. Aaron Willett, RSU 16 School Board.
Thank you.
He did say that.
He did say that?
He
Oh,
did.
I thought he was. I thought you just came in.
Nope, just closing the door.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. I like the attention.
Say it twice, because apparently I wasn't listening.
So the first thing, Scott had asked me to bring in information about what our average pupil expenditures were compared to the state. So I pulled that. Wendy pulled that information up today. And the state average for per pupil operating costs K-12 is $9,726.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I noticed Tina's not here tonight. Is that, so do you need someone to take notes?
Oh, Tina did not let me know she wasn't going to be here, but
Okay,
if you would start taking notes, that
sorry.
would be great, Kim.
I'll try to look for that template.
Thank you.
So our state average was 97.26.
Yes.
Okay.
And our district average is 8,498, so we're $1,228 below the state average per pupil.
So that's K to 12.
K to 12 average. And then the next item that I know you're all interested in is our ED 279s, which lists our funding stream for 14-15, and I'm going to pass those around so you can see what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Good
I'm not
luck.
sure it would much
Good luck
matter.
reading the
Yep.
279s without them. I will.
Really the bottom line we're looking for. So.
Yes, I will talk it through to you. So the good news is we are getting more funding from the state, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is that our student.
I'm sorry. Are we supposed to be on the TV? There's nothing on the monitor up there. Oh, okay, great. Sorry.
Our enrollment numbers are up a little bit, which I thought they were going to. My initial calculations were that we were 7 fewer students, but we're actually 23 students more than we had last year. And when your per pupil allocations are $6,000 or $7,000 times 23 students, that of course is increases our allocation, so that's a good thing. And if you'll, excuse me, yes.
Yes. I'm sorry.
I mean, you popped up, yeah.
They just read, didn't I?
Thank you. I actually wanted. Thank you.
Welcome, Tina. We're just beginning, and Kim was going to take notes for the few things that you missed, but you actually didn't miss much at all. So as soon as you're ready, you can take over on the notes, and Kim will get the first part and add it into your notes. How's that sound? For the school board, I've gone over how to read the 279s, but for those of you who may want just a little introduction, I will talk just a little bit about it. If you'll look down to staff positions, you'll see number 1, it says teachers, and then EPS for like K to 5 is 51.3, and then it will say, if you go across a little bit, 6 to 8 EPS is 23.8, And then 9 to 12, 34.2. And then you'll see that the EPS FTE total is 109.3. That's how many staff that we get funding for. If you'll look, our actuals, we have 117 teachers. So we have, you know, a few more teachers than what is funded. So they only pay 93.93 of that number because we go a little bit over EPS and teachers. And that basically is how this entire worksheet is set up, is it will tell you what do they allocate for us and what do we actually have or expend. And that gives you a heads up on, are we close to what EPS is? And remember, EPS is that minimum standard that we should have to meet kind of the basics that are in the expectations. And so it's not like a maximum, it's a minimum. I may have some extras, Carrie.
Yeah, we got
Okay,
extras.
yeah, if you need them. And so you can kind of go down through and see where are we really close and where are we off quite a bit. Sometimes it's, you know, it might be deceptive, like for librarians, if you'll go number 3 and you look all the way across, we only have 1 librarian. And according to EPS, we should have 2.2. But what we have done instead is, instead of just having 2 librarians, we have a librarian and then we have an ed tech in every building, so there's coverage at there's somebody at every school. So sometimes it looks like we might be low and it's just that we've used staffing differently. And other times we are just low or high and it's right on. But you can kind of look down through there and see where we have put our money and how much the state actually says they will cover. There are a few things, like if you look down to D, other supports per pupil cost, like substitutes, they only give us $39 for a substitute. Clearly, we don't pay $39 for a substitute, so they don't give us the full, you know, funding for items like that. The same would be true if you looked at co and extracurricular. They give us, you know, $117 per high school student, and if you look all the way across, you know, we're bringing in a very small percentage of what we actually spend in our sports programs. The state doesn't fund those at a very high level. So whenever we're way over, like in funding for sports, we have to pick up the extra that you would see in there. So I'm gonna, I guess, move us ahead to, let's see which, if you'll go to page, is it page 3 or just section? Yeah, page 3. You'll see at the bottom total combined allocations, and 18,111,000 is the total allocation, and of course that includes our local share and our state. And if you go to page, I do want to know how that compares to last year. Does that help? Would it help for me to do a comparison for you?
Yeah.
Our last year funds were 17,000. Oops, I'm on the right page. 17,586.
Million?
Oh, million. Yeah, is that what I said? Yeah, sorry. 17,586. 17 million.
So this figure at the bottom of that page, the handwritten figure 524,957, does that represent the additional money we're getting from the state this year versus last year?
That's the difference between those two numbers. And one of the things that's happened is we don't know what's going to happen with the $9.4 million hole in the budget that they're talking about taking away from schools in their general purpose aid. So that's what it is right now. Until that that decision is made, that money could be less. So I just want to point that out. But that looks pretty positive right now, and if they do fill that hole, it would be similar to what our curtailment was last year, which was 113,000. So we're still looking at a pretty good increase in our funding for our next year's budget. Does anybody have questions, or do you want to take a few minutes to look this over? If if you go to page, I think it might be page 5, the next to last page.
Yes. Oh, excellent, thank you.
Well, actually, maybe it's page 4 and 5. You can see where it has mechanic on page, I think this is page 4, section 4. It has the average calendar subsidizable pupil, so you can see how many pupils we have for Mechanic Falls, Minot, and Poland. And you can see the percent of our total population that those students have. If you would like me to, I'm on section 4, and I believe that is page 4. And so, I don't know if people need me to read that if you can't see it, but. And so you can see that breaks down all the way across to come up with our $18,111,000. If you look at section B, state valuation by member municipality, again, you'll see what the average state evaluation is. So Mechanic Falls, we've got 156 million. Mill rate expectation 8.07, and then you can see what the total municipal allocation distribution per valuation and times the mill expectation. So you can see what the contribution for each town is if you look all the way across on that section.
Now but just to clarify, that's before we know what the expenditure side is. This is
Yes.
just based on the
Right.
revenue and the EPS formula.
Yes.
What was the mill rate last year, Tina?
Have that here, let me look. I think it was, wasn't it 8, when did you remember, was it 8.11?
I think it was.
Yeah, 8.11 was the mill rate for last year, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
I think I have it. Right, yeah, I'm sure you, I'm pretty sure it was 8.11. Any other questions? If you look on the next to last page, it does have the state, what our local and state percentages are. So our local share is 44.3%, and our state share is 55.6%. The state has this, yeah, the state, it says that for the state valuation, 1314 has 7.86. I think that's the state. Is that, would that be the final, Wendy?
Is that, I don't know if that's a preliminary or the final.
That was the one that we were looking at in December.
I think that's after their extra money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what we want, I think. Yes, okay. So we know we're gonna have some additional funding coming in. And what I have done is I went down through the, well, I did a couple things. I have a list of, our priority items for you, the costs, the total, and then that comparison to our priority budget. So I'm going to pass that out just for you to reference as we're talking about the next sheets that I have. And I think there's enough for the administrators too, because I think we made 15 or 20 copies, so if you folks would like some.
Yes.
Yeah, no phone, no phone. The one, this one. Here's the one that I want right here. You have to have really good eyesight to look at these. But I'm going to, we have plugged in the information from our 279s, our town down evaluations so that we can see what that looks like.
And if
Overall,
and
if you
do
can
this
read
without
any of
the
it.
priority items?
This is without the priority
Without the
items. We have
priority
another one with the priority
Got it.
items that we can look at after.
Dana
So-
Really?
Yes, and at the bottom, you'll see it says the MOE at the bottom, and I apologize for how small it is. I don't know if we have any solution of that, except we need bigger glasses or or something.
Longer arms.
Yes, longer arms.
But the important numbers, the ones people are always looking at, are fairly easy to see.
Yes, they are. At the bottom, if you looked at the, at least that's what I'm thinking you're referencing, Mary. If you'll look at the mill rate property tax base, you'll see Mechanic Falls, Minot, and Poland. And then you'll see educational mill rate, you'll see the percent change from 2013-14. And then if you go all the way across, you're going to see total annual change. So for Mechanic Falls, it's $5.90. For Minot, it's $6.19, and for Poland, it's $9.74. So, and that's per $100,000 house. That's with just our maintenance of effort.
Tina?
Mm-hmm.
Just halfway down, it says local cost share, and then over it shows what it includes. I didn't change, because this includes adult ed of the 70,000, 80,000 for capital improvement, and 10,000 for the technology reserve. So that's part of this also.
So if we put more into capital improvement over the 80,000, which is one of the things we talked about, the items, that this number would change slightly, is, I think, part of what you're saying. But
Can you
that,
say again, Wendy, what that includes? It includes the,
70,000 for adult ed, 80,000 in capital improvement, and 10,000 in technology. And it's at the very top of your paper, but it's really small to read.
And those are all separate warrant articles, right?
Yes.
But but you're putting it together, shows the total
To
as
show
if
the
everything.
assessment, yep.
and Wendy, am I correct in that this 13-14 number should be 14-15? So I can see an error on the sheet. If you're looking at the bottom where it says after the mill rate percent change from 14, FY14, it has a 13-14, 13-14, 13-14. That should be 14-15. Any questions?
Yeah, just so I'm remembering
Okay.
correctly, because I think I can kind of read this, that the formula, that's the thing that typically kind of makes the difference for each town's individual rate that's based on, and am I reading this correctly, that's 10% pupil and 90% state valuation? And that's the formula under the contract? Yep, okay, thank you.
And that will show right where your middle column where it says local additional cost share.
Yep.
It goes under the full breakdown there.
Yeah, that's what I thought, all right, thank you. So this is saying, if we passed everything in the maintenance of effort budget, including the kind of the additional warrant articles, and we get the money from the state, that the state tells us right now that we're getting, that if I live in Minot and I have a home valued at $100,000, my taxes would go up $6.19.
That's correct.
That's the bottom line. Got it.
So the other list you passed out is the additional priorities.
Yes.
that we,
And so, right, and so when I want to give you a little processing time if you need it, because I know you haven't seen this until right now, but if you're ready, I can show you what it looks like with our priority items in, and we can talk then, I think our next steps might be, what can the taxpayers handle, and, how do we move from there to discuss the priority items?
And what are the priorities among the priorities?
Yes. Yeah.
in terms of other revenue sources to support this budget. So what are, in terms of carryover, what are the other revenue sources that would be part of these numbers, right?
So we put 250,000 for carryover from fund balance that we would carry into next year. And that money, I mean, we don't have our bottom line yet, because of course you know it's not the end of the year, but right now we have, Wendy, is it about 330,000? I'm trying to remember what we have in
Fine, I think it was
right now in fund balance. How much?
305.
Oh, yes, okay. I thought you said 500 and I was going to go, really? Where'd that come from? So we have around 305,000 right now. And we'll have some that we can carry forward from this year's money. We have 249,000 we haven't spent and don't plan on spending of additional funds. So if you think that 300,000 and you add that 250, we're going to be in the $500,000 range for our carryover, for our fund balance, and maybe a little bit higher, depending on how the year ends out for us. So we're figuring 250,000 is going to be about half of it, or a little bit less than half. And that feels safe. We want to make sure we don't drain that down too much. But as a group, we could say we want to bring in a little bit more from fund balance if that's what we decide to do. I'd like to see a little healthier fund balance that gives us a little cushion for future problems. But that is something that we have for revenue that we can discuss when it comes to us thinking about priorities and how much taxpayers are impacted.
So the maintenance of effort has the 250 for carryover, is what you're saying?
Yes, yes, it's part of our revenue stream.
Wendy, of that 305,000, how much of that hasn't been encumbered? Or is that's everything,
That's the bottom
Yes.
line.
bottom line?
Yeah, because this year we're using 230, so it would have been 5 something. We used
Yeah.
the 230 and brought it down to 3.
So that's money that we have not allocated for anything, and it's not available to us. That's our savings account.
Good enough. All right.
So this next sheet I'm giving you is our maintenance of effort with our priority items in them.
With the entire wish list.
Yes.
Put in there.
Well, for the most part. The only item that's not, last time we talked about whether we had really put enough in food service. And I didn't change that because I didn't get a sense that this group felt like that I needed to do that, but we still may want to talk about whether $20,000 is enough for our food service. So basically, yes, this is mostly everything. I'm supposed to have one of those here somewhere. Yeah, thank you. So, again, with our priority list, this reads the same for all other items, and I'm assuming your eyes are going down to the bottom where you're looking for the total annual change. With this change, we would have a $35 increase for Mechanic Falls, $33 for Minot, and $30 for Poland.
And that includes everything on this list that you prioritized?
Not the feasibility.
Does not have the feasibility in it. And I have another one with the feasibility, priority and feasibility, and so I'm kind of going in increments here for you to see.
And this is the feasibility, the big feasibility on it.
Yes, the $100,000. So we have 3 levels of consideration here for the group. Well, we wanted to have all the options out for you to see and figure that it may be one of them or it may be somewhere in between 2 of them. And so this committee would be well informed.
I have a question.
Okay?
And it has to do with the distribution of the increase on the priority list
That's the same
between the
question.
3 towns. I know you have an answer for this, but why, it seems as though that when you go from the maintenance of effort to the priority,
Yes.
the bulk of that, I won't say the bulk, but more is distributed to Mechanic Falls and Minot than it is to Poland. Could you explain that?
Well,
Wendy, could you
we had a
explain?
very lengthy conversation about this, and Wendy did a wonderful job teaching this to me after about 2 hours. So I kept going, my logic, this doesn't work. If it's this much at a smaller number, why is it twice as much? Wendy, would you like to talk about that, because you did such a great job?
You've got it right in your head, Tina.
Okay, I'll do my best, and Wendy's going to help me if I have forgotten, since she taught me this. So, because Poland has a larger tax base, when we go to more money, their percent, am I saying this right, Wendy?
The increase
Yes.
is spread out over more people.
Yes. And so the more money we spend, the trend is for that to drop for Poland and it to even out amongst the towns, which took her quite a while for me to figure out.
I understand.
But yeah, so that, so you can see there's not the doubling of maybe the numbers, like the tripling, like you would anticipate.
But still, with the entire
Priority
list in there,
It's about a $30 to $35
annually.
Per mill.
per $100,000 home. All right, the last one is our priority with the feasibility in it. And the feasibility we put in at about 100,000.
Now, where did you come up with $100,000, if you don't mind me asking?
We guessed.
Well,
Sorry, no, Kim has a better answer.
Not exactly.
Surely there's a better way of saying that.
So Kim did a little research, and I guessed at the, no.
Give me this
No,
one,
thank
too.
you. Of course, it just broadcasts to the world, but, no, we don't have, I'm gonna let Kim speak to that.
You mentioned last night it was also the snow, and tonight I'm guessing.
Yes.
No,
I
actually
didn't
what I
say
did
you,
was.
I said I.
Thank you. So what I did was I talked to SAD 51, which is where I was before, because we at that time were in a building project that would be likely to be a similar size to what we're looking at, and the feasibility study for them cost them, I think it ended up costing them $125,000. So I called their business manager to talk to them about what we were thinking might be what we're looking at, and the estimate was around 100,000. We have not talked to architects about this yet.
So our, right, that's our challenge, is that we're early in the process of this work and the budget is happening. So just getting, an estimate down there that we think is somewhat close is what our goal was. We have not talked to architect about what it might be here, and if there are some, unique obstacles, or something is much less complicated than it was at the site she's talking about. So
feasibility, I missed a few weeks with, so maybe this was discussed further, but, so the feasibility study, can you remind, what is that include? What is it looking for? Is it?
So that's when the architect does some studies. Well, first of all, it's around permitting, takes a look at the land, does some, soils test, whatever needs to be done there. Also starts to build design possibilities.
But specifically for expanding, like, the middle school area?
Yes,
Or?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And then if that study were ultimately accepted and we decided to move forward, we would almost certainly have to bond in addition.
Absolutely.
There, right.
So our first step, of course, is that next year the work would be done, kind of the preliminary work, with the following year when you go to voters with the next steps. So it takes time for the process, and like I said, this is coming at a difficult time because we're just getting started, so we don't really have a good, we haven't made it far enough into the process to be able to do anything further than the feasibility study for next year.
And have we had any conversation with the state about where we might be on the priority list and what's the name of the fund of like thank you, the school construction fund.
So
Not so much, so just, yeah, I didn't.
So they're not even accepting it. They're not even accepting.
Accepting any new, yeah, that's right.
No, because one thing that's convenient about that is that they would then do a study of the entire district, and but they're not even accepting at this point.
So can I, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to go back for just a minute, just back on the first one, because this is two assumptions that carry through to all three of the models we have here. Can you just remind me or let us know if there are any updates on the other two drivers on the expenditure side that are not yet settled or known? And one has to do with the teacher salary piece, and the other has to do with the healthcare. So what have we budgeted in here for both of those?
So for the
I think I remember, but I want to make
Yeah, for the teacher salary, we put in 3%. And again,
is that with or without steps?
no steps.
No steps.
And and again, we have to bargain in good faith, so you
Of
can't
course.
go into the bargaining, situation and say, we've only got 3% budgeted, so we're
Right.
locked in. You have to bargain in
But
good
you also have to
faith.
put it on the budget.
But we had to have something, so that's what we put in. And for the insurance, we put in 10,000, and we got
10%.
What did I say? 10,000. 10%, and we got a press release from the state saying that the top increase would be 9.5. So that's the good news. Last year, we were at the very bottom of, it was 13% was the top, and the bottom was 3%, and we were 3%. What we were told by our MEA rep is that if you were 3% last year, you'll probably be 5% this year. So if your other variables are similar, if it wasn't an anomaly year with a really healthy year compared to the next year being much more sickness. So my hope is that that proves to be stable and that we are around 5%, and then we would get that $130,000 that represents 5% back. But again, we don't know that until we get those figures, and they haven't given us an update about when that will come out.
130,000.
Yeah, 130,000 is what represents that 5%.
So one other question. Now I'm back on the feasibility study. Is it worth having a conversation about whether that should be a separate referendum item so that people can vote on that up or down, and that doesn't influence the ability to pass the entire budget?
Yes, we were in contact with the state financial officer because that's what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so our question was, can we put that in its own warrant article? And we got the answer was a little bit confusing, but we think yes. So they said if it comes from a reserve fund, it can be in a line of its own. So
So the warrant article would then read to create a reserve fund for the purpose of conducting a feasibility study in
Yes.
the amount of up to $100,000.
yes. And what is palatable about that to me is we would know what was being voted down if they were voting down the feasibility study, whereas if it's in our general budget, it leaves that questionable to us what it is they don't like,
Vote
so.
on the feasibility study. Then what? You gotta have a feasibility study. Go forward.
Right, that would mean we'd be on hold for a year. They'd be saying, no, we're not doing that. So we would have a couple other options. If we were in really difficult safety needs for space, we could get a portable. Again, we wouldn't have money budgeted for it.
And it also depends on the grounds. There might have to be some work done on that too.
Yeah. They said it
So
would cost.
You'd have to go back.
Yes, we'd have to go back and, but yeah, it would probably mean that we're waiting a year. And so we would hope that, at least if we know whether they're supporting it or not, it gives us lets the rest of our budget go through if it were being supported.
The other thing with that too is that the feasibility study would be for next year, meaning that then a decision to move forward would be 2 years down the road. So if we were to put it off, of course, that means now we're 3 years down the road, and we know that there are some housing projects and plans in the works and things like that that could also potentially impact our enrollment, so.
But people would want to understand that but if you vote to spend $100,000 to do a feasibility study, then that means that you're thinking that an addition rather than another modular,
Right.
that a solution rather than a Band-Aid is
Right.
that what you're preparing to do, and you understand that that means bonding
Right.
locally to cover that cost. So that's a big That's a big decision that people will be making even just around the feasibility study.
Right. So, if you want to look at the priority with the feasibility study, you can see that it's from $47 per $100,000 house for Mechanic Falls. Minot would be 44, and Poland would be 38.79. So again, you can see how each one of our increases impacts tax base.
Just for being new, I apologize in advance because I'll probably ask some silly questions, but the 305 that we were talking about and the fund balance that's remaining there, is there an opportunity to put that feasibility towards that if we weren't able to successfully get buy-in from the community and use those resources to show some sort of a good faith towards the community that we are already planning on this?
So even with your expenditures from fund balance, that's part of your revenue, that has to be approved by the voters.
Okay.
What you can do is put more of your fund balance in there so that it offsets this number. So the feasibility study and the priority list in there together, if you increased it by, say, 100,000, would bring us in at the cost of the priority list, which would be the $30 to $35 rather than the 47, or the 38 to 47. So
Just
this
shifting
group,
numbers around.
yes, this
I
group
understand.
could decide to do that.
Which way?
Like I said, you want to be really careful about putting yourself in a hole, because you
Understand,
can
yeah.
spend all your fund balance this year or a lot of it, and then next year have your funding from the state drop, and you have no way to buffer that change by using additional fund balance. So, yeah, I agree. So I really, the 250 I think is safe. It's a good amount to put in there, but it allows us to have what I would say a healthy fund balance for the future, especially if we're, yes, if we have a curtailment or any of those other things, it gives us some
Thank you.
cushion.
And where did you say the extra funding that we received last year, where is that now considered to be part of our fund balance, or where is that?
So Wendy might need to help me with this, but the 249 is basically just sitting there. It's sitting in our accounts right now, and it will be put into fund balance at the end of the year because we didn't go to voters to spend any of that. And so that will be added to our 305 and make that a 500 and some odd thousand. And then if we have a couple $100,000 left in our budget at the end of the year, that would also go in there. So that boosts our fund balance up to a decent level, but we won't know that until we get a little bit closer to the end of the year how much is left. And it won't be as significant, I don't believe it will be as significant as has been in the past because of that charter school. We have almost $100,000 in unexpected costs to the charter school. That's a big hit for us to take.
So kind of going back to the fund balance is basically what we had left over as of the end of June of 2013.
Yes.
Correct. So are you saying that altogether it was 555,000 and we're allocating 250 of that towards this budget? Or,
Are you talking about last year or?
well, cumulative, so last year and anything that was left from before?
Yeah, so, yes, the last year money plus the 250 will be what our fund balance is in June of 14.
Right.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, well, I was just trying to kind of keep track because I'm not looking at what we're gonna have left over at the end of this June because we can't touch it
Right.
for another year. So I was just trying to wrap my head around the 250 that we're putting in. When you said there's 305 left, then we must have had
Yes.
over 500,000.
Because we put in $230 into this year.
So that 249 then is not part of that 500,000. Is that what you're saying?
No, it is
It is.
part of it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's what I was trying to
That's what will
figure.
be, that's what we will have in June. At the end of this year, we'll have that 305.
Okay.
Plus the 249 that we haven't spent, and any additional leftover from our budget for this year.
Okay. Wendy's looking at my notes and nodding her head, so I
Yes.
must have it right now.
So kind of looking at the bottom line, looking at the numbers here, the jump from 6 to 38 will feel like a lot to people, I think, even though $38 probably isn't actually a whole lot on 100 mils, but you don't know what's happening with the local taxes, and you know, it adds up. So you want to be conscious of that. What I'm thinking about if the health insurance actually comes in at 5%, I mean, that's a way where you can, I would still recommend doing the feasibility study up or down on its own, and that's not a decision for us to make, that's a school committee decision, I assume, anyway, but for what it's worth. And I just think that that's a cleaner approach for the taxpayers in the community to understand what it is they're voting on. But if we were to get those savings from the health insurance, we could apply that to split the difference, for which is not how the math actually works, but basically between scenario 1 and scenario 2, that would still let us do all the priority items, but even find a way to reduce the cost there for the taxpayers in doing that, but still meet the needs of the school and the students, and then set the feasibility study as its own separate question for people to react to.
I tend to agree with that, because it's easier for a taxpayer to look at one bond item.
Right.
And be able to understand it and vote from, instead of looking at an entire $18 million budget.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree completely.
So, just to sort of understand more what Colin was describing, if we took, say it's 5% for interest, or insurance rather, and then you have 130,000 that we didn't expect that we now have. I think what you were saying, so maybe I'm not correct, but is adding that back in the budget, so that would sort of give us, that getting to the priority list, including that, but really having the number, instead of like 3322, it would be like less than that, because you added that 100.
Exactly.
So then
It would be a chunk less than that.
So then we do the feasibility study,
That's the
though, and
technical.
say folks say, yeah, we want to do that, and that's $100,000. Where does that come from?
So what would happen, and this is what we did last year, we budgeted 10% increase on insurance, and the minute we found out what it was, that was pulled out of the insurance lines, and it was a savings, we took it out, and our information that went out in our budget was accurate. So this year, I think what I'm hearing the group say is if we did come in and save that 130,000, that we would put that into a separate warrant article, a reserve that would say 100,000 for the feasibility study, and so it wouldn't change the bottom line necessarily. It would just shift where it's going.
That's not what I was saying.
Oh, what were you saying?
So
Okay.
but that's still, I mean, that was just something that I was saying. I don't know what the whole group wants
Yeah.
to do. What I was saying is to take that 100, I think I said 150, that 130, and simply apply it across the budget, so that
Your priority
if you do the maintenance of effort plus the priority list, instead of in mine it being $33.22 per mil, it would be $18.47, or however the math happens to work out. So it would allow us to do the maintenance of effort plus everything on the priority list at a lower cost, because we realize those savings. And then the separate question of whether we want to do the feasibility study, and then Tina was asking the very good question of it, and so where would that money come from? And you'd have to kind of phrase it in the warrant article to be clear. Do you want that to come from fund balance? Do you want that to be an additional amount raised locally? And you could kind of spell out what it would look like. I don't know how that works exactly, but that was what I was saying, is to use it not for feasibility, but to make it more likely. My personal priority is to make sure that we get the budget passed plus the priority items, because those are the things that are immediately going to impact the kids for next year.
Right.
The community as a whole has to make a really big decision around what to do with the space issue. So.
But this is based on the 10%, right, like with our budget. So getting back to what you're saying, because that's what I was trying to sort of just flush out these details. But if we still would have an extra 130,000, right? So if we're looking at this with the priority list and what this would cost, if we would have an extra 130,000 already, because this is based on 10% interest, or
Yes.
I keep saying interest, insurance. So we'd already have that. Then we'd still have,
We would be pulling
We have
that out
another.
the minute we knew, unless we, I'm not quite sure I understand Colleen's point of spreading it out.
I think in order for Colleen's to work, we'd need to know that really soon in terms of that insurance information, wouldn't we?
So this
And
is what
I
I-
don't think we're going to.
Well, this is what happened last year. We knew by the time we did our final budget. So I'm hopeful that by April, we know, which is, 2 or 3 weeks away. That's when we knew last year. So I have no indication that that's coming out in 2 weeks. But if they did the preliminary that the top is 9.5, they must be pretty close on what each system is going to be getting, because they've at least done the averages, and they've released the top.
Let me ask a different question if I could, which is a procedural question, and back to so can you remind me of the role of this group and then the role of the school committee? We make recommendations, I believe, correct? And then the school committee ultimately decides what budget to put forward, whether it includes the priority items, or all, some, or none of them.
Right.
Whether it includes a feasibility study, whatever strategic approach you want to take to the feasibility study, and where the dollars come from or how it's presented. That's all. So, but we would make recommendations on all of those issues, or just on the budget itself?
I think it would be helpful if this group made recommendations on all of it, and that it's put forward to our school board, and it is their budget, so it passes or fails on their, on their recommendation. So what comes out of the board could be slightly different or different than what we recommend. But, I think we have a school board that is working well together, and they are put great trust in the committees that we have. So, I feel confident that if we went forward with a recommendation that they felt would pass a budget vote, that they would agree with the recommendations of this committee. And I don't know how the others feel, but that's my sense.
But
that
ultimately, that's up to the school.
Yes, that's the final say would be the school committee.
Because the school committee has to actually vote on each of the warrant articles that are gonna go to the meeting.
So my initial thought when I was looking at all three of these was, wow, it would be great if we can get all the priorities and the feasibility study for the cost of just the priority list. That would be great. But with the insurance savings, it sounds as though that's almost likely?
That's
Possible?
possible.
It's possible. Is it likely possible, or
I-
is it
I-
far-fetched possible?
Well, because last year was the first year they used the experience factor, and every school system was billed for their insurance based on that, we don't have like a trend line. So we have a 1 year, we looked at what your insurance impact was, and we are charging you this much. So it's hard to say if that was a typical year. Did we just have a really great year with not a lot of people sick, or was that average? And because I'm new to the district, I don't have, I don't have a history to say, yeah, our, sick day bank and all of those things were pretty consistent, and we think it's similar. I don't see this year as being a lot different than last year was, but until I have like 2, 3, 4 years of a 3 to 5, I don't feel really confident saying that. But according to Anthem, if we had 3% last year, they felt like it was unlikely that there would be a huge swing. They said expect about a 2% increase because of the Obamacare requirements, and so that's why I'm saying I feel like what they were suggesting to us is it would likely be around 5%.
Well, I'm optimistic. Plus, Poland Spring Water was famous because it had healing properties. Am I right?
I could use some of that.
Maybe that's what keeps it down.
That's what I'm saying. Speaking of water, I could use some.
So would it be possible for the next time we meet to get these, you don't even need to redo the 3 sheets as far as I'm concerned, I just want to know the bottom line for each of the 3 communities, if we back out that 130, and then we can see what it is for the for the maintenance of effort, for the with priority, and for the with priority plus the feasibility study, and then we can just kind of, is that an easy thing to do, Wendy? Awesome.
I also think it would be helpful for us to have a revenue sheet and one that is clear that's the whole balance. And, so it's clear what all of our revenues are coming from.
So are you talking the state and then the local share for revenues, or are you talking?
Including what fund balance we're using, how much, all of that, so we can see what the revenue is.
So,
First page of the financial.
Right.
yes, the
That's
first,
really what I'm
okay,
thinking.
that's what I was gonna
This
say.
First page.
Okay. So, do we want to, anything else that we feel we need to do tonight?
I guess I wonder if we need to take a look at the priority list and see if there are priorities within priorities, if we need to, or whether we just want to take it as is.
Well, it would be helpful if, probably if a little bit of the preliminary conversations happen, because we're being pushed up against, next week there'll be a lot to consider if we are trying to determine our bottom line budget. I'm just trying to find that sheet.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah, we have a new one.
On this sheet that you passed out?
Yes.
The feasibility study is already.
But if you look at that first quote that they gave us, the dollar difference was 250,000, not 350,000, so, yeah, it was in there.
I didn't get one of those. Thank you, Arthur. Or I had one, but I passed them all on. Much appreciated. And you can see at the bottom of this, the MOU budget and the priority budget, and then the difference is $346,513.
Let's start right at the top, shall we?
Yeah.
My grade for PCS teacher. I think, honestly, that's a priority.
So-
Because of the size involved.
So when I spoke with Rick, that's what he said that as well. He said if of all his priorities, that's his number one. That, we don't want classes of 25 children, and, a few more move in and we've got to deal with it. So, we would agree with you that that's
Is that a
a
consent?
big priority.
Any,
I just have one question. I know we talk about school size and space being limited. What does it look like over at PCS? I've only been in the gym in that facility.
He
Does it
has
have
he has one space that he can use. It will mean they have no conference room, but
Okay.
he can accommodate one more classroom.
So it wouldn't be the teachers relocating throughout the day to have a permanent room?
Nope, they would have a permanent room.
I think the special ed teacher in Minot is high a priority.
Yeah.
Partly because of the age span there,
Mhm.
and the scheduling difficulties that
Yeah.
makes to comply with.
And, we had a teacher with 10 years' experience leave because the job wasn't manageable. It wasn't like it was a new teacher. It was, I think 10 years or quite a few years of experience. So it's very difficult to have a small school, and, it's not that the numbers are overwhelming, it's that the schedule is overwhelming because it's such a great span between pre-K all the way up through 6th grade.
any other discussion on the halftime special ed teacher in Minot? Okay, moving on. District behavior mentor K-12. Now is that the same, is that the Dean of Students RTI coordinator?
No, this is
Behavior
This
specialist.
is a behavior specialist that would work with teachers wherever there are crisis students, like students that are really needing maybe unique interventions or a skill set that our staff don't have, and work with them on how to handle those new situations or different situations. Evaluating the needs of students, helping them put into place new plans, how to respond in situations where students are escalating and showing extreme behaviors. And so we initially were talking about having 2 positions, a K-6 and then a 7-12. And when we realized how big our priority list was, what we had talked about is that this person would be K-6 for 4 days a week, but that at the high school, the School to Work program has, it's at its limits with enrollment as well, and so we didn't feel like we could get along without some supports for that program, so we're saying at least 1 day a week that the School to Work teachers would also utilize that person to support their program. And you know, it's not easy to move between 4 buildings, but we thought that that would be manageable if it was handled by, not having to be in a certain number of the other schools on any certain day, but that it was handled by priority. So mine, it might have a priority in kindergarten that lasts 4 weeks, and then just needs some monitoring, spot checking after, and it may be that PCS needs it for a certain amount of weeks when a new student moves in and something like that. So that person would be prioritized at, you know, Holly Days level to where their work would be.
And you're also looking to expand capacity. The next 2 items in the priority list here are for assistant principal and
Yes.
RTI folks. So even if you don't have the 2 positions for the behavior specialist, you have 1, but plus some
Yes.
expanded capacity within the buildings.
Yeah, and when we dropped the 7 to 12 was when we were having that conversation. If we had an RTI coordinator, we probably wouldn't need a 7 to 12 person full-time, and that is kind of that trade-off.
So I was gonna ask that question, but that's probably where the RTI person comes in, because you did mention the 7 to 12
Yes.
coverage. The other question I had, which I think you may have answered, but aren't you finding more and more kids that have sort of behavior issues and that sort of thing when it's becoming more and more of a problem?
We are, and it's not just here. We brought in a specialist last year to work with, was it our kindergarten or first grade at Minot, Arthur? In kindergarten last year, and when we debriefed with the person, she said that this was happening all over the state, and they were seeing a high need for training for pre-K, K1 teachers. All ages, we have students coming in with increasingly serious issues, but it's been really dramatic at the very young age because they have so much more that's happening to them, and you know, we're having to really step up and provide additional support for teachers to know how to respond when you know, a child is in crisis, and that's important. So what we were thinking is that that position was really critical, and if we, the way Rick, you know, when Rick talked, he said he really did feel like we wanted to, for him, he's not here tonight, he had a vacation day today, but for him, the teacher was the most important thing, and if he had to stay with a, you know, a 3-day-a-week assistant principal, that would be, he would go with the teachers, you know, the student impact before the change in administration, but the difficulty there is that we still have that gap in the middle school that we would want to address at least somehow if we don't increase the administrative position.
Gina, just one question.
Oh, sorry, Erin.
No, it's okay. With the district behavior, just a question on logistics. They're going to be primarily focused between K through 6, you know, with the minority of the time being spent in the other one. Do you really see it being feasible for one person to cover that successfully, and especially when they're only going to be in the majority of the time they're going to be focusing, say, for 4 weeks in one school? What do you see the impacts being if they're not at the other ones for that duration of time?
So I wouldn't see them needing to be in the school for the whole day. So if you had maybe a kindergarten class with 3 students who are really struggling, or it might be they're working with one teacher and one child who is really struggling in the classroom, that they may need to be there for a 2-hour block to help get a routine in order, maybe to observe to see when the child is escalating and what's contributing to that, what kinds of things are happening. And so they would observe and watch and help implement a plan, work with a teacher on strategies they think would work. And then they might just be supporting and monitoring. So they could conceivably work in, you know, with 4 different, you know, 3 or 4 different situations at a time. So it may be with teacher X from 9 to 11. They may just have an hour where they're doing a monitor with a child who's just borderline, or a teacher who's just having minor problems. Yes?
I just want to add that we also envision that as somebody that would help with staff development for those younger grades, and that's where there'll be there are some commonalities of issues and strategies that all the K teachers on a Wednesday afternoon on an early release may be working with the person.
That was going to kind of lead.
So there'll be some of that too, so.
Okay, that was going to be kind of my next question is, who does a person like this report to? Who's their direct leader? Would it be an actual principal, or would it be you too? Or
It would be Holly, and we have that in the special ed budget.
Okay. Yeah, good. Thank you.
So, and it's not, they wouldn't only be working with special ed students, but a certain percent of our special ed budget can be allocated for regular ed as well. So this person would work with, the child or children may be special ed, but they also may be our regular education students who just have emotional problems that they need some training or support for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Many bad days, so, yeah.
If we were to leave the structure, the administrative structure, the same at PCS, I mean, that would impact the proposal for the middle school. Is there, how could we provide the support that Sean needs, and if we decide to leave the PCS structure as it is?
So there's a couple of possibilities, and if that's what we want to talk about, it'd be great to go back and have that conversation as administrative team. But what I'm thinking about is it could be that we still have Kelly at 3-2, and that there's a half-time RTI coordinator or a stipend position or something else at the middle school that is put in place for students who are struggling with behavior, reading, writing, which is where we're required to provide RTI. So it may be that we add a half-time, teaching position with a stipend or something that could do some of that work rather than having the administrative increase.
Because I was hearing Sean say what he needed was that he needed another person there to support those kids that were really struggling.
And so right now we have it half-time dean, half-time RTI, but if Kelly stayed there 2 days a week, he wouldn't need the half-time dean. He might just want, we may be able to compromise and say we'd want a half-time RTI. But I would really like to have that conversation with them if we knew, well, we're staying with the original structure, how could we support what is kind of the minimum the middle school might need, because I do think they need something.
So Sean's not feeling well, but I will just chime in because he and I worked so closely together, and when Aisha was the principal as well. This is a long-term issue since the building was first consolidated. We never put in supports for kids. The elementary school has title positions, an extra staff. The high school has that. We have an alternative program. We've got a learning center with tutors. We've got stuff for kids. There is nothing here. We consolidated this middle school bare bones, and it was the right decision at that time. I mean, that was what was necessary in the budget crisis. But I think we're at the point where they're going to struggle to make progress, I think, without that. And there is an impact on the high school. We have donated, sort of used our staff to make plans for kids individually who they've not been able to serve there. So we've been using some of our staff occasionally. And on those days when Kelly's not there, or even when Kelly's there, Sean's not there, I mean, and we would do this anyway, but I think because we're in the same building, there's a lot of that back and forth, and the pressure that I see coming from the middle school around these issues, I feel that. I felt that when Aisha was there and she would land with me and we would try and problem solve and sort out and know when we hit a wall about where a kid could go or how we could help serve them, and that same experience is happening now. When Sean or Kelly lands with Patrick or I, trying to sort out how we're going to make progress. So I think, that for this complex, this position is central. As soon as I knew that this was something that they had talked about, it was like, oh, that's going to solve a ton of problems for us. So I see it as something that benefits the whole building up here.
Yeah, I definitely think that we need at least the RTI. I'm just not sure that we need needs to be a complete change in structure between PCS and the middle school, but I would agree that there's gotta be some support, because as Carrie said, they don't have any.
So,
Do we discuss this more? Should?
Well, I'm hearing Tina say you'd like to go back to your administrative team and talk with them about that.
well, and
If
I guess what
there's-
I would say is if, of course, we'd like everything on the priority list if we could have it, but we do know we have taxpayers that we need to be thoughtful of. So if we wanted, if you wanted us to go back and say, if we had to give up, you know, the administrative structure, what would we, is there, you know, some proposal we'd like to make? We definitely could do that. I don't know if you're saying we definitely want that. I mean, if I had direction from this group, that, I mean, how do other people feel about the administrative increases?
I guess there's a couple different issues, right? So there's the direct fiscal issue, and then there's the kind of structural issue that Mary is raising, kind of what's the right structure to support those students. And I was hearing fairly clearly from the administrators that structural change is really what they feel like they need to meet the needs of the students. But that is adding administrators throughout, and that's something that sometimes people have a hard time swallowing.
So actually, we're not adding an administrator because we're doing the assistant full-time in one building, and then the half-time dean and the RTI coordinator are a teaching position with a stipend, because they just work with students. They wouldn't like evaluate staff and do other things like that. But it is a full-time addition. We could consider a part-time addition, I guess is the way I was thinking about it, and know that Kelly might still would probably need to split her time between the two schools. So we do have so it's not really, we're not really increasing administration, although they're.
Not going to convince anybody of that.
Right, they're not, right, they're certainly going to have, the time at the middle school is going to be focused on students. And supporting students either in their behavior in reading or math, and intervention programs for them, which is probably quite a bit different than what an assistant principal does, because they're also observing teachers and evaluating and sitting in on IEPs and all of those kind of things. We don't anticipate that. I mean, they may do some IEPs depending on, probably not, but Carrie's got her hand up, so I don't know if I'm listening.
No, I'm just gonna add an additional thing, so.
Oh, yeah, yeah, we are feeling like it is going to be different than an assistant principal, but you're right, it's not somebody who's gonna be having their own classroom with their 20 kids showing up for English today.
So I would just add in, just additional information around PCS. That school has 500 students. Only regional high school has 520. And we're not that far off. Elementary school is similar size. Typically have 2 administrators. We look at Oxford Elementary, Norwood. I mean, so I think there's an issue at the middle school for sure that I think is very, very emergent. But forever, PCS had 2 administrators. And then when Aisha came up to serve the middle school and the high school, is when all that splitting started to occur and things were stretched pretty thin. So I don't think it's a huge stretch to say that PCS can support 2 administrators, a principal and assistant, given that they're really not far off from the numbers we have here.
We did do a little bit of research with the local schools, and Carrie is right. You know, Oxford, I think, you know, the position's open right now, and it has 500 kids, full-time principal, full-time assistant principal, and pays $12,000 more for the position than we're paying our administrator. So, you know, those are parts of what get in the best administrators and keep them here when we have them. So, and one of the things that's really challenging is covering all the IEPs. You know, that's one of those things that I know Rick has, talked about as being really challenging.
So, just to kind of throw it out there, and I completely understand it. And the only thing that concerns me with anything is the fact that you mentioned earlier that we lost a teacher that had 10 years experience because of their workload. We lost we're trying to fight to keep good people, and I'm just afraid that if we don't invest in it, that we're literally going to be chasing our tail in the next year of losing good administrators, principals, anybody for their workload. So I don't know how to necessarily prioritize it, but if there's anything else that we can look at as being a priority, you know, that's less significant than this one, but I think that this should probably stay up there. That's just kind of my feeling on it.
Mary Ellen?
I think that looking at these positions that we are looking at are for student support. And even though, for instance, the behavior specialist is working directly with a certain portion of our students, it benefits all of the students in that the regular classroom teacher then has more time to focus on all of the other students. So I think that given that I don't think the increases that we're looking at here are huge. So I think it's worth forwarding it along to the school committee and to the public in the form of the presentations that we give for discussion there. I think that if we make the reductions at this point, then we don't give the public the opportunity, the chance to give us their input on what they feel.
I would support that wholly, and I'd say that if we're chopping 30,000 out, you're not going to see this drop enough to get anybody's attention. So I agree with Mary Ellen that just
I think
present it as
it's worth putting out there for a discussion.
Yeah.
Are we talking, and what about the feasibility piece of that? Have that be right out there on the table as well?
Right, right. And and the good thing is that we have our public meetings where people can ask questions. And that is our opportunity to, these are the sorts of things that we need to have multiple opportunities to explain.
Yes.
So,
and Kim and I are starting to prepare for doing another podcast.
I'm taking important notes
I
on
know
this.
you are. I know you are. She doesn't want us to think she's texting. We know she's not. So we, yeah, I think we could get information posted on our website that has, you know, maybe some of the rationale that principals have given us for these items, or our facilities director has given us, and then you're right, we can prepare that presentation and ask people to come out and give us feedback. And you know, we could even probably post like a well, we have our budget email, and then just encourage people to send us emails with their feedback through that angle, or we could consider doing a survey and posting it on our website where people could respond to different parts of the budget. But
and I think also making sure that we, before the public meetings, ask our town officials to post it on their websites as well.
Yeah, I think these public meetings need to be as highly attended as possible, so whatever we could do to get people there would be
so
the best.
What our experience was last year is we had about 30 people, maybe at each one, and they were the 30 people that were very supportive of our schools. So we got a lot of feedback like, we need more GT staff, we need to have pre-K, or what about the art program, or you know, that's where we got the music, you know, why we got the music program in there. So yeah, we would want to get hopefully to a broader audience than 30 people, but maybe we can get the PTO and other organizations to help us get more people out, because I do think that's important.
So is it the desire of this committee to set the entire priority budget forward, and let the school committee and the public input sessions take their course and see how it falls?
Okay, so we have, I was just looking at my calendar here, so we have 2 more meetings on the books for this group, and then the school committee gets it, I think, and then we go to the meetings in the communities, and then we go back to this group and back to the school committee, and then we take over to the leader, and then we do the big town meeting style meeting with a vote and referendum for that. So there's still a number of additional places along the way we can give input and get information.
So at the next meeting, we could print out the full budget with all the items in it and the bottom dollar. That also goes along with the sheet that we shared today that had the maintenance of effort, priority, and feasibility on it. And I think that was the $50 increase. So I just want to make sure people are comfortable with that.
Are we gonna set the feasibility
confused.
separate?
That's what I'm asking.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, I would have you bring us the full budget with all the revenue and all the expenses for the maintenance of effort budget. That's what I would do. And then bring us just a sheet that has these 3 bottom lines for maintenance of effort plus all the priorities and
Okay.
plus the priority plus the feasibility. Because then we just know what the bottom line is that we're adding, right?
So the MOU, the
MOE.
MOE, would
And
be
with
the
all the-
revenue.
with all the detail.
Yes, and then you just want, the condensed version of these 3 with what, when you say the bottom dollar, are you saying the total annual change?
No,
Or
for me, I'm, at that point, then I'm just looking at the total annual change in the mill rate for each
Okay.
of the 3 towns.
Yeah.
Based on the 3 different versions that we've been talking
Okay.
about. And pulling out the 130 for, if we feel pretty comfortable, I know it's a little bit of a gamble, we don't know for sure, but,
I don't feel real comfortable pulling that out.
okay.
I mean, I'll try
I'd
to.
still like to know what those numbers are, though. That's what I was asking for on these 3 numbers, was what these look like if we back out the 130 for the health insurance.
Okay.
To see.
But could
We
you
can
do that?
find-
So
yeah.
can you do
Yeah.
sort of like the way it is now,
Yep.
that if it comes in at 5%?
And I'll make a call to find out if they when they
When they
think they'll be
yeah.
released.
Because we do have really almost 2 months, I think, before the public town meeting style meeting is to pass the budget, so.
it
That
is.
gives us time to get.
I think it was in early April when we got them last year.
Are we saying that?
But that's just what I want, I don't know
Okay.
what the whole committee
How
wants,
does,
so.
how do the rest feel? You okay with
Yep,
that?
I think I'm good.
Ann?
Right.
Okay.
Well, I have a question as far as the school committee is concerned. Our next school committee meeting is when?
28th.
28.
April 28th.
So we can, if we have the option of calling a special meeting, or we can request them, you know, if we had, do we think we're gonna need 2 more meetings? Or do we think we could kind of wrap this up in 1 more meeting?
I think if we have all the
And then
information,
maybe
yeah.
the next Monday, we could, I would have to look at our calendar, but maybe we could see if we could get a quorum of our board and present what we have so far.
I think we had changed it to the end of April just because we wanted
We had to
to
back-
line it up so we could vote on the warrant articles,
Yes.
right?
So,
So if we want an opportunity
Informa-
to discuss it before that, we'd have to.
right,
call them.
a special meeting, we might be able to do that. What do the board members, what do you think?
You could call it on the night of your committee meeting night, because then at least people would have that night
Everybody's
set
there.
aside.
Yes, that's a great,
The next one's the 24th of this month. I don't know if that's too soon.
so the 24th, no, that would be,
Because the 18th is.
yeah,
It would be nice,
So it'd be
though,
the
if
day
you could wait
before.
until we get the insurance numbers.
right. But if we had the 2 scenarios, you're right. If we said, here's what it is, we're hoping it's gonna be this with the 5%, but we don't know that. And at least we could be discussing, you know, the increase and see how palatable that seems to our full board.
Do we have a committee meeting night early April? Did we flip those? Is that what we did?
Let's see, next committee meeting is that's April 28th is also a special board meeting. Board meeting.
I don't think we
We
did.
don't.
We don't
because I
have
have
an
to go to that
April-
special board meeting to go over
Because
the
we had
committee
all the
meetings.
informational meetings
Right.
scheduled, so.
So
So
there
those-
aren't any meetings that are scheduled, not even the subcommittees?
But you said in the 24th of March, we have one.
We have one on the 24th of March, we have another board meeting the 14th of April, according to this, unless that's a mistake, which.
That's a
Taken off.
mistake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the
So
20th.
if this group meets one more time, which would be on the 18th, and then we feel like our job is pretty much done, at least
Right.
for now, then that can get presented or
Right.
shared or whatever for the school board at their meeting on the 24th,
Mm-hmm,
right?
yes,
And,
We have our committee meetings that would change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And-
then-
and if there were, yeah, I think That would work, and if there were some urgency for one of the committees to meet, we could say, the budget part's gonna happen during finance, please all come. And then, you know, if they wanted to have the committee meetings on either end, if there was something urgent, we could either have shortened versions of those, or still hold the other two. Well, hold all three, but have the finance one be the budget, and try to get everybody there, that that's actually a board meeting, not a committee meeting.
And that would get the full school board kind of thinking about
Yes.
the kind of more macro level questions about how you wanna slide things one way or the other based
Right.
on what you're,
Yeah, we want to have all that discussion
Yes.
before the 28th. We don't want,
Yes.
we want to pretty much be set
Right.
before then, so.
So the 24th, if we do that, that's before our community meetings.
Which would be a good thing.
Yep.
Because we would get a pulse on if they have a certain direction they want us to be moving. It gives us a little bit of time to make some inroad corrections.
Thursday of that week is the first of the community meetings that's scheduled, so. But it would, yeah, you get the pulse of that.
So that Monday is the 24th, is that what I'm hearing, Kim?
Yes, Monday's 24th, but that, didn't you?
We
guys change
changed
the
that to
time for us?
Wednesday, I think.
Yes, you did, because of Kara's thing.
Right.
So 26.
Right,
That week.
Right, but we didn't
So-
change the Monday committee meetings.
So I think the one Colleen's talking about on Thursday has actually been changed to Wednesday.
So Wednesday, 26th.
Yeah. And
That's
the
the Elm Street.
25th,
Mechanic Falls?
Yes.
That's the Elm Street one.
That's been
Is
changed to
26th.
Wednesday, yeah.
and
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Okay.
we've got to get that message out,
Right.
now that you're saying this. Thanks, Kim.
Sure.
We just voted on that, or discussed that at the last night at the board meeting, because principal of the year banquet is that Thursday, and we
Oh.
want to be there.
Excellent.
So.
When's that again?
The 26th, Carrie.
Have a great time.
Yeah. I will. I'll make sure I give a speech on your behalf.
So are
I
we,
think she'll show up now. Yeah.
so are we changing the 24th to a actual board meeting?
I think that,
Is that consensus?
yeah, I think that that's what we will want to do.
The 24th of
This
March.
March.
Yeah. So that will have to be here for just size-wise, I'm assuming,
Yes.
so we're gonna
Yep.
change from there. Thank you, just so I don't go to the wrong place again.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? I think we're doing well. Thank you all. Great. Well, I'm sorry, maybe that was supposed to be Scott that says that.
Thank you all.
Did you do that or just me?